recording. There it is. All right. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we have so many mutual friends. It's ridiculous. I'm surprised we haven't met sooner. Are you up in the Seattle area?
I'm in Seattle, yes.
You're in Seattle. What's it like outside today?
It's actually a little bit sunny, which is kind of weird because it's been really, really depressing and dark.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Are
But
you
nice
affected
to-
by what is that like do you need to
seasonal
do?
affective? You know what? I have like the sunlight lamp. I
You
do all the
do?
things to like combat it. I don't know that I'm a huge sufferer of it, but I don't want to be a sufferer of it. So I do all
Huh.
the things to make sure that I don't.
That's amazing. That's super smart little preemptive self-care,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Well, I'm so excited that we were able to connect and that you were able to come on the podcast. I had actually been aware of your work because I had seen it on Instagram. You just wrote a book. Do you want to share the title?
Yeah, sure. It's Highlight Reel, Finding Recovery and Honesty Beyond the Filtered Life.
Oh my God, that's so perfect. I was like, that is a brilliant title for a book because I think so many of us are affected by, the comparison syndrome, right? It's like we think, have you ever heard that concept in recovery that we judge our insides based on other people's outsides?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You look at other people and you think, wow, they just seem to have it together. And here I am over here making a mess of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow, that is such a brilliant title for a book. And you have a lot going on. So I thought maybe we would start with, typically I ask people to share about like their family of origin, because that really sets the table and sets the tone for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
But maybe we can start there. But I would just love to hear about how alcoholism or addiction has affected your life. And then maybe the second half of the episode, we'll talk about some solutions that have helped you over the years.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Hey.
So I grew up in Montana.
Oh,
And
Montana.
yes, we were actually there just for Thanksgiving. There was lots of snow. It was very cold.
Yeah.
So my parents moved there. My dad was in the National Guard, and they moved there before they got married, or maybe they had just gotten married very early on. And they decided it'd be a great place to have kids and raise a family. And so they just happened to pick Helena, Montana. So that's where I was raised. So I didn't have any extended family around. And it was just my brother, my older brother, and my parents and I. Small town, really quiet, sweet upbringing. I had a traumatic, something traumatic happened to me, which you can read about in the book, but when I was 12. And I really, at that point, became someone who covered things up or dealt with things myself. I really would put things away and close it and sit on it. Like I would think I was fine because I just wouldn't deal with things.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Can I interrupt you and ask
yeah.
you if you're comfortable sharing, like what was the nature of the traumatic event? Was it like a car wreck or a?
No, it was actually a sexual assault.
Oh my
Yes.
God. How, at
Yeah.
12?
Yes, I
Oh,
know. I
sorry.
know. Oh, I know. So, and it's really common. And
Oh
again,
my
I
gosh,
talk,
it's
I
so
talk about
common.
it. I talk about it in depth in the book, and
Okay.
so I'm definitely fine sharing.
Okay. I don't want to re-traumatize you.
No, not at all. No.
Okay.
So it's something I've dealt with now, but I
Mhm.
didn't deal with for a really long time.
Sure.
And so those things that you really put deep down, you have to have a way to deal with. And
Yeah.
because of that situation, I really never had normal relationships with men, with boys at that age, as a teenager, and going forward. So I had just a really, I hate to use the words addictive personality, but I felt like alcohol was really not the thing. That was more the solution to the things,
Sure.
right? It was how I
Yeah.
treated, my sadness or my anxiety or feeling uncomfortable in a situation. I really used alcohol for that. And so that really started at a pretty early age. I had my first drink at 14.
Okay.
And I think for a long time, I was able to hide I didn't know I was an alcoholic. I couldn't tell you when I realized that maybe I was a different kind of drinker.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime something bad happened, anytime I did something that I wasn't supposed to do, I was always drinking. I was always under the influence. So it
Right.
wasn't like something bad always happened when I drank, but when something bad happened, I was drinking.
Right. Yeah.
But I think as a teenager, when you're surrounding yourself with people who are doing the same thing, it's easy to hide those behaviors. So I didn't really see anything I was doing anything worse than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing then in college, when other people are binge drinking, your heavy drinking doesn't really seem so bad.
Right.
And so if I did,
You just blend in.
yeah, you just blend right in. And I think if I did think I had a problem at any point, I was always able to justify it with the behavior around me.
Yeah.
And same thing, as I became an adult, drinking's very social. And yeah, I might black out here and there, or have too much to drink. But
I like how you
again,
say that.
it's
Like
just
your
no big
face is like,
deal.
yeah, it happens.
Because I do feel like that's something that now it's just, oh yeah, that happened. Oh, I got too drunk. Oh, this, oh, that. It's really easy to blend in, even though it shouldn't be.
Yeah. How old were you when you first started having blackouts? Do you remember? Well, I guess that's a funny question. When was your last blackout? Because by definition, you don't remember, but
Right. I mean, honestly, as a teenager, I know I had several blackouts.
you were aware that you were like
I was
missing blocks
aware,
of
yes,
time.
I was aware that there were things I couldn't remember.
Right.
And they only got longer and stronger and more frequent.
Right.
Where in the last part of my drinking, I was blacking out every single time I drank.
Oh my
So
God.
it really does only, it's true what they say, like it only increases, it only gets worse.
Yeah.
So as an adult, I felt like, I was handling it better. I was controlling my drinking a little bit better, but I got married, got pregnant many times. So I stopped drinking 5 times, right?
Times. Meaning you have 5 kids?
5 kids.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so quitting for 9 months at a time, 5 times, that to me justified, even though I did think I drank a little more than I should, I questioned it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any major consequences. I could always rely on that. Oh, I gave it up. I stopped for 9 months, 5 times. I'm fine. And I also, the other thing I didn't say, growing up, my parents didn't drink.
Oh, they didn't.
That's one of those things that, again, I think if you come from a line of alcoholics, oh, it was in my family. It wasn't in my family. And as far as I know,
Right.
I mean, who knows if my parents drank, maybe they would have been total train wrecks. I don't know, but
Yeah.
they didn't. And so I really used that.
That's interesting though. Why didn't they drink? Do you know?
I
Were they
mean,
religious?
I wouldn't say that they like never drank or they weren't sober.
Uh-huh.
It just wasn't something that they did. I think maybe the first time I saw my mom drink was at my wedding. It was just not
Really?
an activity. No, it wasn't
Okay.
something, and they weren't real social. My dad did have like a work buddy over here and there, and I think I remember him, drinking a beer here and there, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a central point of our house. We didn't have it in the house. We might have had, actually, I take that back. We had 1 bottle of liquor in the house. It was Seagram 7. And the only reason I know this is because it was the only bottle of liquor. And I think it was a gift or something that just was always on it's so funny that this is just coming back to me now. And my mom will listen to this and be like, that's where it went. It was on the top of the fridge.
Are you going to share this with mom?
Oh yeah. She's heard it all at this
Oh,
point.
okay.
It was on top of the fridge, and because my parents didn't drink, I knew they wouldn't check it. And so I did that
Right.
thing where you take some alcohol out of it and fill it with water, and they never did
Sure.
know. But they drank little enough, or it was not a central point of the house that I just
Nobody noticed, huh?
non-drinkers. Yeah, and they never noticed it. Um, so yeah, it wasn't like they avoided it for any reason or had any problems or no religious reasons. It
Yeah.
wasn't something they were interested in. So I
That's
always
something.
look back at that as it's interesting to me that I became so obsessed with it and dependent on it.
Mm.
But I always use that genetics part to justify I'm not an alcoholic. I don't come from a line of alcoholics.
Oh,
I'm able to quit for all of these times during pregnancy. But I knew, and I would say by the time my youngest was 1, I knew I had a problem. And I would start Googling symptoms. Am I an alcoholic? I would talk to friends, and I would talk enough to kind of do you think I have a problem? And, I would never air enough dirty laundry so that I might get those rights of drinking taken away, if that makes sense. Like I didn't
Yeah.
want to give I didn't want to give any red flags away. Um, but I knew that I needed help at that point. So I had a couple of years where I did try and stop myself. I stopped for a month, or I started setting all those rules. I'll only drink on the weekends, or I'll only have 2 drinks, or I'll only drink if I'm alone, or I'll only drink if people are there. Like I would start changing the rules. Well, nothing would stick, and I'd always break the rules. So it just kept escalating. And, eventually all those things that start happening that they say are going to happen. I got the DUI. I
Oh,
actually
that
had
must have been horrible.
awful. I had surgery, and I had to quit drinking for the surgery. But then I was put on painkillers, which then I ended up getting addicted to the painkillers.
Oh
And
my goodness.
once I got off the painkillers, then I started drinking more, kind of to compensate. So that was really the height of my drinking. And yeah, that's when I got a DUI. But even then, so I would say that was probably the worst point of my drinking. And that was about 6 months before I actually quit. Because
Okay.
even then, even still, getting arrested and, getting my car impounded and all of these things, I still had, even my husband, my friends, people justifying the fact that,
Wow,
oh,
even your husband?
yeah. And I think there's a lot of enabling that goes along with drinking, because it was something that was in our relationship. It was something we did together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even he didn't realize how bad it was, which sounds crazy because we were married and lived under the same roof, and he saw all of these consequences happening. But I think because it is sadly such a normal thing that people drink and drive,
It is.
drink a little bit and drive, and I minimized the situation. That
Right.
I wasn't really that drunk. I hardly had anything to drink. Well, that wasn't true. So with me minimizing it and having friends and family kind of coddling me and feeling bad for me and saying, oh, it could have happened to anybody.
Oh,
That,
about the DUI. Yeah.
right?
See,
Yes.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it could have happened to anybody. I know I've driven drunk before, right? Where
Yeah.
you're getting all these messages of maybe it's not that bad. Um, and so it still did take another 6 months for me to finally have enough and quit and walk into my first AA meeting.
So you had the DUI but you had already been questioning your alcohol. How long do you
Mhm.
think you questioned your alcohol before, between the time you started questioning it to the time you showed up into the 12-step rooms?
I mean, it was around, like I said, when my son was about 1, which would have been, you know, 2013. I didn't get sober until January 2017. So it was a good, 4 years of
Hmm.
knowing my drinking was a problem, but not doing anything about it, at least not outwardly doing anything about it, not getting treatment, not talking to a counselor, not going to a meeting, just trying to manage it myself.
Okay.
And obviously that didn't work. I did a terrible job managing it.
But it's so interesting because I think that's, I work steps with a lot of women, and what comes up is like that period between you start questioning to like when you surrender, and especially if you're a resourceful person, um, it seems like that period is longer for somebody who can manage a multitude of things except for that one thing. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like it
Hmm.
takes a long time to get to that point of surrender. So
Hmm.
it almost seems like the longer it takes, like the more manageable you are in other areas. So, and you had been in like the corporate world up until that point, or
Yeah, and I would say that's what people would describe me as. Wow, you must have been really high functioning, which I
high
don't know how I
function?
feel about, you're a high functioning alcoholic. I've heard that many times,
What's
which I
the resistance to that term about?
I think because the idea that you can function, high functioning, like you're never at your optimum functioning when you're drinking. So saying high functioning alcoholic, I mean, I was holding things together. It appeared, right? I
Right, yeah.
had, it looked like I had this beautiful family. I was doing really well at work. I looked like I had it all together, but I was crumbling. And who
Crumbling
knows
on the
how
inside.
well I might have been doing had I not been drinking. So I think it puts maybe an unfair advantage on people who look like they have it all together. Like you're good at being an alcoholic. Like you're an alcoholic. That's it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I've always, that's a little bit of my resistance. I understand it. I understand it. Like from the outside, you look like you had it all together. But the fact that I was high functioning, like looking back now, I was not functioning.
Do you feel like it minimizes the level of pain or suffering that you were enduring?
For sure. But I think that's, I think that came from me. And I think a lot of
Right.
alcoholics can say that too, is when you're showing everybody the good things, when you're not telling people how bad it is.
Right.
When again, you're asking your friends if they think you have a problem, but they see you have one or two drinks and you're really drinking a bottle at home. I mean, that's what I was giving people.
Right.
And
You're
so
showing
they,
them the highlight reel.
the highlight reel, right? And that's where that came from. Like
So brilliant.
showing people all the good things and them not really knowing what's going on.
It's so funny because I feel kind of conflicted about, people call social media, like for instance, Facebook, they call it fake book,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not so sure that it's appropriate to like air all your dirty laundry out on Facebook because not everybody is, healthy enough to respond in a constructive way. You know what I mean? So I don't share all my dirty laundry on Facebook.
Right. I think it's more the like dichotomy of before social media, right? You had your
Right.
friends that you called
Mm-hmm.
and you talked about some good stuff, some bad stuff, but you maybe wouldn't share all your dirty laundry, but there was a balance, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now we're in social media and everyone sees us and we see everyone and we see all the good things. And so if we're not getting any, I'm not saying like we need all the dirty laundry, but what you're comparing to, you're comparing your worst moments with someone else's best moments. So
Yeah.
we're
I
not
agree.
connecting with people in the same way and getting any sort of balance. And
No
so I don't think it's a
balance.
matter of like everybody needs to be strong enough to share all their junk. I don't think
Yeah.
that's it at all. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
realizing that what you see is not reality most of
Right.
the time.
Yeah. 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 I think it's easy to, they say that comparison is the thief of joy,
Mm-hmm.
and, but it's so interesting because until you really sort of have those concepts in your mind, it is easy to feel bad and feel disconnected
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So it's, for me, it wasn't until I got into recovery that, when people started sharing their dirty laundry, that's where I got connected. Did you have a similar experience where you were hearing the worst part and going, oh my God, me too?
Definitely. The reason I went to AA is because I knew one sober person. And now looking back, of course, after the fact, you only see what you want to see. Now I know lots of sober people and I see lots of people who were sober the whole time that I just didn't reach out to those people. But I knew one gal who was really open about it on social media. I knew she was sober. I knew she went to AA and I had her number in my phone for months, probably for 6 months. In fact, right around when I got the DUI, I think I reached out to her just, just kind of to tell her what had happened. And I know you're sober and kind of what
Mhm.
do you think? Like getting her, I don't know if I was getting her opinion. I don't even remember what that conversation was like. But from that point on, I had her number in my phone and I called her when I just had enough and just said, what do I do? Like, take me to your
Take
leader.
me to
Like,
your leader.
right? Take me to this magical like 12-step land and tell
Yeah.
me what to do. And so I went to my first AA meeting with her.
Wow.
And I went with her and it was a mixed group. It was a men's women's meeting
Hmm.
and it was very small, but I heard some things that, just made me realize like I wasn't alone. Very different stories, but all like the same theme, a
Yeah.
lot of the same pain.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to a women's meeting myself, alone.
Mm.
And I just, well, like, it was just this emotional, like, flood. I, cried and I was just like, this is it. Like, I had to tell, it's like I had to tell somebody how bad it was.
Yeah.
And all the things that I was keeping secret and how bad I knew the drinking was and how bad it was making me feel and all the horrible things that had happened, everybody just like nodded their head. I was like, yep, been there. And when you go from thinking you are just the worst, which so many people come
Mm.
into recovery thinking they are the worst person, nobody's done as horrible things, nobody could possibly love them if they knew what they had done. And you walk into a room of people who are like, oh, I can top that.
I
And
know.
just to feel so like it's okay.
Yeah.
And there is a way you can get through this. Like you never have to drink again, and your life will, like it offered me not just, yes, it's a problem, stop drinking, which
Yeah.
I had known for months and was not able to do anything about, but it offered me hope.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and that's what kept me coming back in, is that
Was
I
the
saw
hope
all
that
those
things could
people in
be
there.
different?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that all these people were here for a reason, and some of them were sober for a year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, and
Yeah.
they obviously were still here. Like nothing I was doing was working.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to give this a shot, because it was like the first time I had hope that I could live without alcohol in my life.
Isn't that something? It's like,
Mhm.
we connect with people who understand our kind of crazy. Like we
Mhm.
think, oh my God, I'm so, like the whole terminal unique thing. I kind of suffered with
Mhm.
that when I first came in. And then I started hearing some of the stories, and I was a little bit shocked that they were telling these horrible
Yeah.
stories. But then it made it okay for me to share, my crazy stories too. And then over the years, I found a new normal. Do you feel like you had a similar experience, that you kind of found a new normal?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of my story was around secrecy and not being honest, and I think a lot of
Yeah,
addiction is like that. Even if it's
sure.
just the, no, I'm not drinking. No, I didn't drink last night. I mean, the little white lies, right? Where
Yeah.
you're lying to yourself so much, um, and the keeping of secrets was, I didn't realize how draining it was on me emotionally and mentally, and I really started to heal as I started to share and talk more about it. And then I just started integrating that more into my life outside of the rooms. And even when I first walked into AA, and I realized that I needed to quit drinking, and I just told everybody, all of my friends and everywhere, like text, Facebook, I just put it out there because I knew that there was no other option for me at that point. I knew that I could not
Yeah.
drink anymore. And so for me, being like brutally honest was
Right.
just,
Yeah.
it was really the only way to be, after living so many years of trying to cover up and live in shame and keep secrets.
Right.
Um, I just healed so much through that process.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's when we get honest and start sharing that we start healing. I'm so curious. Did you, I mean, there's these traditions that we don't break our anonymity.
Hmm.
And I had to wrestle with that when I started doing the podcast. How did you come to terms with that, personally for yourself?
I mean, I understand, I definitely understand the anonymous part.
Right.
As far as you go in the rooms, if you see someone outside of the rooms, that's the part that's tricky. If you see someone in AA, and like you wave, and then your kid's like, how do you know that person? I'm like, shit, I wasn't supposed to, like, I
The
wasn't
gym.
supposed to identify them. Yeah.
We go to the
Um,
same coffee shop.
yeah. So like, I get it that you're not supposed to identify anyone outside of the room.
Right.
You're supposed to leave what's said there.
Yeah.
So I get all of that, but I really don't believe that the anonymous part applies to us as individuals. And for me, again, being secretive did not serve me at all. um,
Yeah.
and I think the accountability piece, and maybe everyone doesn't need that. Maybe that's not a thing for everybody. For me, I know the accountability is huge for me, and it wasn't enough for me to say, okay, I'll be accountable at AA, and I'll go there and my sponsor will hold me accountable. Like I need to be accountable in my whole life,
Hmm.
because my sponsor can't be with me all the time. Um, and so I think the anonymous part for me, like I couldn't keep, I can keep obviously what's said in the rooms and other people anonymous, but
Right.
my own sobriety, I'm out there, like I'm recovering out loud.
Me too.
Hmm.
I'll be. But yeah, I mean, in a way, it's just my own personal opinion that a lot of that secretiveness is actually fostering shame, not
Hmm.
resolving it. Like,
Hmm.
oh, we're going to have like this secret society. I mean, I'm certainly not going to out anybody,
Hmm.
but if you look back at the history of AA, in the literature, it talks about the need for anonymity. There was a need for it because for employment.
Mm.
Like people didn't, you couldn't get employment if everyone knew that you were an alcoholic, but also there wasn't enough people to help everybody. They were so overwhelmed with requests for help that the people needed to stay anonymous so that they weren't just completely overwhelmed inappropriately. I mean, it was like really it was about having healthy boundaries. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think, attitudes and, mainstream perspectives have changed enough where and plus the other thing that bothers me, and I wonder if you see this too, that like mainstream people try to tell our stories and they do a terrible job at it.
Yes.
And it makes me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the idea, and honestly, it was some of the beliefs I held too before I walked into AA of what an alcoholic really was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're all over the place. We're everywhere. And I am always surprised when I'm in the rooms and I hear someone say that like people at work don't know that they're a member of AA. And again, like I try not to project myself on other people, but that for me, again, the compartmentalizing I can't do.
Mm.
And while I agree there should be a safe place to go, there's a safe place to speak, safe place to talk to other people. And for those people who, eventually we know a lot of people do come in those rooms and leave.
Yeah, that's true.
So for those people to know that it's safe to go into, even if they're just questioning their drinking, everyone's welcome. But yeah, I struggle with that too. So it's hard. It's not like I want to be a spokesperson for AA by any means, but I do think that that's one of the reasons why it's not as embraced, maybe.
Yeah, could
Yeah,
be.
because there's shame around it. Yeah.
There is shame around it. It's a complex issue, and I am conservative, I would say, like professionally. I still have a day job
Mm-hmm.
and all that. And I went to a work meeting, and just by I don't even know how it came out. It comes out when it needs to, though, in funny
Yeah.
ways sometimes. But there was something in one of my coworkers had mentioned. I don't even know how it came out, but we discovered that we were both sober. And it was really amazing. But he was like, yeah, nobody knows. I was like, oh, really? Like, I will, it's like kind of a coming out
Yeah.
process, like you're continually coming out. But I kind of want people to know me first before I say that, because there is still so much stigma
Mm-hmm.
attached to. So I will, do you sort of like find an appropriate time to share that? Like, do you wait a little bit, or how do you, like professionally, how do you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of a situation where someone doesn't know. Like I've been so out loud about it. How does anyone not know that I'm sober?
Right.
But I did notice the other day, actually, I was volunteering for something at school, and a parent, who obviously doesn't know who I am, was like, "Oh, you can go help yourself to a glass of wine." And I was just like, "Oh, I don't drink." And so I usually say it that way. If it
Okay.
does come up, no, I don't drink. Just to kind of rip the Band-Aid off. So,
God, yeah.
and then usually someone will rush over and be like, she's an alcoholic, it's like somehow works. I can't believe you offered her a drink. But
Yeah.
it happens. It's
Yeah.
just, again, it just always reminds me it's so assumed that everybody drinks rather than assuming people don't. I don't know.
Yeah. When I'm at a work function, like we have to go to, Vegas like twice a year or
Yes.
whatever for trade shows or whatever. And I just say, like, if someone offers me a drink and I'm like, I don't have time to explain this to you. I just say, no, thank you.
Yeah. And that's should be all you need to say. Like, why do you need
Yeah.
to explain? You don't
Nobody
explain if you
cares.
take it. Yeah.
Nobody
And nobody cares.
cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody gives
Nope.
two shits whether I
No,
drink or not.
no, they don't.
No, they don't. It's funny.
And when
Yeah.
they do, it's usually because they are questioning their own drinking, was what I found.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is a thing. That is so
Mhm.
funny. It's like we're
Exactly.
just mirrors, and
Yeah.
if you're not drinking and that person is, it's like they get all like, why not?
Yeah. And in fact, I had someone the other day who reached out on social media, and we were both invited to something. She was there. I was there. I'd never met her before. She reached out. She's like, "Hey, I noticed you were the only other person not drinking. And I was wondering how long you've been, I was looking at your Facebook, and I was wondering how long you've been sober." And it was just so funny because I didn't notice who was drinking or who wasn't drinking. It made me realize like how far I've come,
Yeah.
because I was always noticing what people were drinking,
How
or
are you?
if someone wasn't drinking, I would notice.
Right.
And so it was just interesting that, again, she saw what she needed to see, and we had a good conversation. But Yeah.
Well, here's a good thing about, having sort of a polished outside image. It's like we are examples. And sometimes we're I heard people say sometimes you're going to be the only big book anybody ever sees. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a good thing to be open about it, even if we fall. And that was the other thing is, some people were like, oh, don't tell people you're an alcoholic. What if you relapse and everyone's
Yep.
going to think that AA doesn't work? And I'm like, that has nothing to do with AA. Whether I
Mm-hmm.
choose to drink or not, that has nothing to do with the program and everything to do with me. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that the program doesn't work if somebody relapses. It means that we're alcoholics and we normally drink. you know.
Right. And that's not to say that there are people who get sober other ways too. It doesn't mean that AA
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
work. It just means that works for them and this works for other people. And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things. I utilize other things too. And I think it's one method. You go into AA and you take what works and leave the rest. And that's
Yeah. It's not
what I've always
religion.
adopted. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
religion.
So this is a good, maybe a place to transition into solution. So obviously the 12 steps worked for you. Did you do the whole program? Like you got a sponsor, you worked all
Yep.
the steps, you helped
Yeah.
other women through the steps?
Yeah, we met every Sunday for
Mhm.
the first year at a coffee shop by my house, which, that's one thing I will definitely give my husband credit for not only just putting up with so much of my shenanigans when I was drinking, but when I did finally say, I've got a problem, and he was like, you do?
So
It
cute.
was, yeah, he was like, okay, well, what do we need to do? And so every Sunday, he's a parent, but it's a lot when you work all week long, and every Sunday morning,
Yeah.
he had the kids while I met with my sponsor. And
Yeah.
so I went, I was the fourth step was very hard
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and very good. But yeah, I got through all the steps, took me a year.
Mhm.
And
That's great.
I have worked with sponsees, and every time I feel like I find something new, maybe a fourth step that I didn't quite, resolve totally, or something new that comes up because life still happens and things still come
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And I find myself more every day doing the living amends and,
Sure.
how can I do that differently today or even right now? It's not that AA has now stopped me from making mistakes because I still
Oh,
do all
no.
the time. It's just helped me realize that I don't need to drink over them and that there are ways to,
Mhm.
make everything better for myself and control it from myself and not about other people. I think that's been the biggest blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that, like, when I first showed up to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was completely self-centered, but incapable of self-examination, right?
Hmm.
And the steps were a process for me to do that self-examination to sort of come out of that denial. Um, and it's so shocking that, even if you come out of denial momentarily, it's like my sponsor is always saying that the ego constantly is rebuilding itself so that
Hmm.
that's why it's, constant vigilance is required. But we do evolve and grow and change. We don't get struck perfect or anything like that.
Hmm.
So that's probably a good reason to try a multitude of different things. So what were some of the other things that you have utilized since you started your recovery journey?
So when I stopped drinking, I think the first month, I've heard this from a lot of people. It's like that pink cloud.
Yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
patting you on the back and, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you're counting every day. And, oh, I've got 2 weeks now. I've got 30 days. And everyone's so happy for you. And then around like 2 or 3 months, shit starts kind of hitting the fan a little bit. And, and,
Yeah.
and I start realizing at that point, like I was using what I was using alcohol for, the self-medication aspect of it. I
Yeah.
was needing to find other outlets for that.
Yeah.
And so, I started learning how to meditate, which was really freaking hard for me, like
Hmm.
really hard to turn my brain off. That was
Oh,
really
yeah.
hard to figure out. I started seeing a therapist.
Okay.
Actually, one thing I did actually about a year into sobriety, I did TMS therapy,
TMS, what
which
does
is
that stand for?
it's cranial, or wait, transmagnetic stimulation, transcranial magnetic stimulation, or something like that. Of course, I don't have it
Is
right in
that
front of
is
me,
that
but
like EMDR?
so that's different. So I also did that. So I did EMDR,
Okay.
yeah, with a therapist. But TMS is basically it's kind of an MRI technology where they stimulate a certain part of your brain that the brain that regulates serotonin.
Mhm.
And it's supposed to, mimic what antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicines do, without the side effects. And so, I had been on antidepressants for years, but I was also drinking. And so this
Mhm.
was really for me, just a way to kind of address some of those, you know, anxiety reasons for drinking. And it did really help a lot, actually.
That's amazing. I have to look
Yeah.
into that. I don't really know a whole lot about that. I know about EMDR for
Hmm.
trauma, and I hear
Yep.
that that's really effective. Did the
Yeah.
EMDR help you become more desensitized to triggers or?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, it was more of I had buried things so deep.
Mhm.
Um, again, so this assault that happened when I was 12, I knew it had happened, and my husband knew that something had happened. And I told him about it, but I forgot, not forgot, I had buried so much of
You
it that I
detached from
couldn't.
it?
Right, I got so detached from it that I never processed through it. So it really involved going back through those things again, and using EMDR to go back through and remember things. It was like almost like my memory got unlocked. So
Yeah.
really, I had to remember things that happened decades prior, and then other things. So I kind of had to go chronologically through my life, sort of to make sense of it, like opening a wound and then rehealing it again.
Mhm.
So that's what I used it for. And I mean, it was difficult, but really transformative. And y-
Transformative. Yeah.
yeah, and it really, again, because the drinking wasn't the problem. I was drinking because of all of these things, is
Yeah.
what I realized when I quit drinking. Yeah.
Symptom of a
So
deeper problem. Yeah.
exactly. So the EMDR, saw a therapist, exercise regularly. I just do things that I hate to say what that are good for me. Like that's, I think it's a very general statement, but I ask myself now how things make me feel, as opposed to just like getting a reaction, or, I ask myself, what am I feeling right now? When I would usually take a drink, what is it?
Mhm.
What's another way I can deal with this? So I just I ask myself more questions. I'm more reflective.
Mhm.
I listen to my intuition more, which is something that I didn't think I had good intuition because I made such crappy decisions when I drank. But I knew that that wasn't me talking. That was my.
Yeah, yeah. In all honesty, I don't think that's fair because
Mm-hmm.
we become really detached,
Mm-hmm.
like we shut off our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we don't honestly know whether we do have good intuition or not because we're so detached from it. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to highlight that you said that you ask yourself, how does that make me feel? Because I think it would be easy to gloss over that, but that is really the only way we have to navigate our feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it's so easy for us to rationalize and justify like what other people are doing to make it like we're brought up to be nice, especially as
Mm-hmm.
women, which means that we learn to discount our feelings and detach from them. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so brave and so incredibly practical to take a moment to check in with like in your body, like how did that land on me?
Mm-hmm.
And because I feel like a lot of us, our hurt button is on delayed reaction. Like sometimes I'll walk away from a situation and it'll hit me like a day later,
Yeah.
but 2 days later, where I'm like, wait a minute, that was fucked up.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Or do I really, the reaction I want, the thing I want to say right now, is
Yeah.
this really going to help the situation? Things like that, where I would get myself into an argument or whatever to like prove a point, or even with
Yeah.
my kids. I mean, I think about that, like, am I saying this to help the situation, or am I just trying to be the parent right now? Am I trying to, like, is this going to help? Is this
Right.
going to help me? Is this going to help him? Is this going to help? And
Mhm.
I think so much of learning about yourself and growing is about just being like shutting the hell up, like be quiet.
I know.
And if you can't improve upon the silence, like don't. And I think that's one
Oh,
major thing I've learned.
if you can't improve upon the silence, don't. I love that. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and here's the funny thing too. It's like I have often found that's like There is no rule that says like if you have an interaction with somebody and you didn't get to say what you needed to say, and you want to own your truth, there is no rule that says that you can't go back and have another rational conversation with someone.
No,
Clear the
exactly.
air, but like this is of course after your self-reflection, self-examination, and you own your part, you get clear about what your part was, and you have to check your
Mhm.
motives and all that. But there's no rule that says you can't go back and say, hey, let's clear the air. I don't feel good about our exchange. Can we try again?
Mhm.
Like even with my husband, like we've been married a long time, and we kind of have this joke. It's like if we especially in the beginning, we'd get in a fight, and then you come to your senses and things cool down, and we have this thing where it'd be like, hey, do you want to be friends?
Yeah. Want to kiss and make up?
Yeah. You
Yeah.
want to be friends?
Yeah.
And so, it's like, I don't know why it's like our egos are just so, our egos create all this separation. So it's important that I just want to commend you for that, for sharing that tool of checking in
Mhm.
and seeing, does this sit well with me? And if not, what can I do to make it right? If anything, how do
Yeah.
I own my part? All that stuff goes
Yeah.
all together with the, let me ask you, how did you learn meditation? Because it's in the 12 steps, but I hardly ever hear people talk about how to meditate, because I feel like there's this idea that you have to turn your brain off, but I think of it as a practice. Do you
Yeah.
think of it
So
as a practice in the
for
beginning?
sure, for me, I had to use an app, which it
Oh,
sounds
which one?
Headspace,
I
called
love
Headspace.
Headspace.
Yeah. So I mean, it seemed ridiculous to me. Like, okay, I'm trying to clear my mind of all these things, and I need to use my phone to do it. Like, is this really going to help? But it,
Does sound
it,
kind of ironic.
it does. But it was
No.
more of just, okay, it's really just breathing, like coming back to your
Yeah.
breath, and
Yeah.
it's not about, because I thought, God, I'm working so hard to try and clear my mind. I can't clear my mind, and
Yeah.
it's really not about that. It's just like coming back to yourself. And
Yeah.
if a thought comes in your head, just let it pass. And
Mhm.
um and again, like slowing down, because I did feel like I could never turn my brain off. And um that wasn't because I had a defective brain. It's just I wasn't slowing down and like letting things settle and taking deep breaths, breathing through things, as just reacting all the time. And when you're used to having a feeling and just drinking, you don't really know what to do with those feelings when you stop drinking. So meditation was a really hard thing for me to learn, but
It is
now
great for emotion management. I
it's
feel
so
like,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
feel
you can
like
do it anytime. That's one thing
anytime.
too. I thought I had to be like, you know, sitting cross-legged in the corner in a dark room. I mean, I just had totally weird thoughts about what meditation was. It sounded
Although
kind of
that's not
like,
a bad idea.
no, it's a great idea. If I could ever be alone in a dark room, I would
I
totally take
know
the
you don't have
opportunity.
kids. How old is your youngest now?
7. Yeah.
7. And your
7.
oldest?
He's almost 15.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So,
Mine just started driving, so
oh,
brace
scary.
yourself.
I know I've got one more year. Oh,
So scary. Girl, you got 6 months. So you're going to get a permit pretty soon.
I know. I know. Well, and it's like, I really want him to be able to drive his siblings around. But
I know.
so I'm like,
Can you take over? That'd
I
be
know.
awesome.
That'd be so great. So great.
Yeah, they're not allowed to drive with the people younger in the car until they're like 25 or
Well,
something.
they can with siblings. They
Oh,
can with
okay,
siblings,
good.
but not friends, which I think is a
Got
great
it.
rule. A
Yeah,
great
because they got
rule.
to take their kids
Yeah.
to they got to take their siblings to
Yeah.
school, right?
You got to help out. Start pulling your weight.
I love that. Well, I wanted to give you a few extra minutes so that we can talk about. I know you do some coaching, and
Mhm.
I want to talk about your book. Can you share with me a
Yeah.
little bit about, like, I think so many people have great stories, and writing a memoir is probably on everybody's. I don't know. I think it's on everyone's bucket list. But what was that process of writing like for you and getting that all out there?
For me, honestly, at first, it was always something I wanted to do, is write a book. But when I started getting sober, I really thought it would be a story of a mom getting sober. Like, this
Mm.
is what it looks like for a mom of 5 to stop drinking, and this is what it's going to be like over the next year or so. Like, that's kind of what I thought. And then as I started going to therapy and as I started working the steps, so much of this unfolded, and I started realizing it wasn't drinking. It was all of these other things that I drank for, and all these others behaviors in my life. And so for me, it was sort of like the stream of consciousness journal. And as I kept writing, more things came out. As I started talking more to therapists and doing the EMDR and working the steps some more, it just started unfolding. And so it ended up being this 40-year, chronological story of my life. And that's when I met with Anna, my publisher, and
Anna David, she's
I think
amazing.
I've got something here. Yeah. And so we put it together in a book. I mean, that's really, it's like, if you feel like you've got something to put out in the world, and whether you start blogging or like just start writing. Because for me, even if I had never put it out there, like for me, it was so cathartic to have it all in the computer on paper.
And
It
now in a
just,
book.
yeah, and now it's in a book and now everyone can read it. But it's so funny because it's like the secrets that I never wanted anybody to know. It's like, oh, should I put this in a blog post or a story? It's changed my life so much, sharing it,
Oh,
being
yeah,
open.
yeah.
But it is just so freeing and so cathartic in so many ways.
Do you think about what your kids are going to say when they read it, if they do one day?
It's a very adult book. Like it's
Like they
definitely
may
not geared.
not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the things that are in it, on
Yeah,
their level. They
sure.
know why I don't drink. They know that bad things have happened when I drank. And
Mhm.
so it's led to more conversations about topics that we might not have talked about yet. So it's been really positive for us. If for some reason they were to read the book cover to cover, which, we've talked to them about why it's an adult book, then we'll talk about it. But there's nothing in there for me. It's the truth. It's honesty.
Yeah.
And I'm a human being. They're human beings, and we can, we'll deal with it. But,
Yeah.
I think about, my mom reading the book and talking with her about it. It only strengthened our relationship. And, my husband, like, it only strengthened our relationship. I feel
Yeah.
like, you really connect through your stories, and, like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I love that. And now, you are able to help other women in a very unique way. So you do some coaching as well. What's the name of your website? I already know, but
Oh,
tell everybody.
EmilyLynnPaulson.com.
Hey, I'll put a link to it in the show notes along with your book. What type of do you have a structure for your coaching?
So recovery coaching is kind of the bridge between, you know, therapy and, in-person or inpatient treatment. It's sort of that missing link. Um,
Right.
I work with women who also do 12-step,
Hmm.
and I work with women who are, not in AA at all.
Hmm.
It's not therapy. It's more about, goals, specific goals that you have. Could be around drinking. It can be around behaviors that you have around drinking. And so it's calls either weekly or, twice a week, or Zoom, depending on people want to be face to face. And then I do group sessions too. So it's just all about the comfort level of the women that I work with.
Hmm.
And it's just really a way to talk to somebody who has been there. I've been there as an addict, alcoholic, and also I've been trained to help other women in recovery. And so, I'm open to all recovery pathways, and again, it's sharing your experiences and hope with others. And so that's really
So needed.
what
And I
I
love
offer.
that you give women a safe space. Like I don't feel like there's enough of us
Mm-hmm.
that can do that. Like there's enough suffering to go around for sure. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So well, listen, thank you so much for your time. I just think
Yeah.
you are adorable and super smart. And I'm so grateful that there are people like you who are, carrying the torch and trying to pull women out of that suffering and give that, corrected perspective, but just a different way of looking at things so that they can have more peace and joy in their life and manage their feelings in a healthy way. So
Yeah.
thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for coming on. And I hope everybody buys your book because you got some stories.
Yes, that's right. It's a good one.
Some good ones. Well, listen, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Arlena.
Have a great day.
Okay, too. Bye.
I need a movie cut.
Yeah, cut.
Okay. What's that thing called?
Ah,
Oh, well, thank you so much. I think that was
yeah.
great. Do you feel good about it?
It was great. I'm
Awesome.
like, oh my gosh, I got to go get my kids now. Ah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, just in the nick of
I
time.
know.
Good. Well, listen, I'll give you a heads up when it's published. I'll shoot you an email and I'll send you a link and all that stuff. So
Okay,
you can
cool.
share it. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Arlena.
All right. Thanks.
Okay,
Have a great day.
bye.
Bye.